Okay, so today, this beautiful night, we will first, as I said last week, review the halachas of the same Talmud of the Bracha. Last week we only discussed Mash of the Ruach. We're going to review those halachas, and then, as we mentioned, we're going to go straight into the laws of Kiddush Levana. Tonight is the first night that we can do it. Did they do it here?
No.
Well, we're going to learn that they should have. Come on.
We can do it tonight.
I mean, right after Mari, you're saying right after Mari they should
Well,
Yes,
hopefully some more people will come. And we'll have
I
it in
need to
here.
do it. I'm done, yeah.
It's like really hot in here, isn't it?
Nobody's
It's
done.
hot.
Okay, we're gonna. But before we go into that, let's do the same
Well, you
Talmud.
could have done it
So,
yesterday, no?
right, we began saying the same Talmud last night here in Eretz Yisrael, in the entire Eretz Kodesh, and for all the Israeli citizens who are currently in the diaspora, they began saying it hopefully in Shema Tefillah, as we discussed in
They
daily
have a
halacha.
residence in America, permanent residence?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So, what happens if somebody forgot? This is, guys, just basic review, a summarized review. If somebody forgot to say the same Talmud Bracha, they said the same bracha. In such a situation, it's very important to know by heart what I'm about to say, so you don't have to start looking it up, walk to the bookshelf in the middle of Shemana Esrei, saying as one person wants to send me an SMS, saying as one person wants to send me an SMS in the middle of davening, in the middle of the Shemana Esrei. These are things a person has to know off the top of his head, and it's not that complex. The rule is the following. When the Chachamim and the sages established that in Eretz HaKodesh we begin the 7th of Marcheshvan to recite the same Talmud in the blessing of the same bracha, in the blessing of Baruch Aleinu, that means that one who did not do so, Shino mimatbea shatav v'chacham, has changed from the dialect, from the form, from the language that the sages set within the prayer, and that automatically invalidates the prayer. You prayed. No one's saying you didn't pray, but you didn't pray the prayer that the sages established. And everyone agrees that the nusach of davening is rabbinical. So it's true. If you're asked above, did you miss a biblical day of davening? You didn't. You davened today. Did you fulfill the sages' obligation? No, you did not, because you didn't say it the way they established. Okay, so because of that, a person who did not say something about the bracha has to repeat Shemana Esrei. But if you remember before he finishes Shemana Esrei, there are a number of stops that you can say it in. It's not like Ashkenazim who forget to say Mashavur from Erev Geshem, that they, in all case scenarios, have to go back to the beginning of Shemana Esrei. There are no other bus stops. It's over. They missed the flight, they have to make a new flight.
Like the Yad Aviyah?
Like Yad Aviyah.
We have stops. Are you saying if you missed the same Talmud or no? You're saying bracha?
Yes, if you forgot the same Talmud. Okay. So if you forgot, Mashbuch we discussed last week.
Yes.
So if you forgot the same Talmud and you remembered before saying Hashem's name, so say it then. Say it then, and repeat the last few words before saying the bracha. If you already said Mavarich Hashem, like, oh my gosh, I said the same bracha. I didn't mention rain. Right now, before you say the next word of Tikah, say the same Talmud Bracha.
By itself.
By itself. You sandwich it.
Before Hashem's name?
The halacha is,
before Hashem's name?
if you remember before you began Hashem's name, then say it then and finish Baruch Hashem, Mavarich Hashem. If you already finished Baruch Hashem, then finish Mavarich Hashem, and then say the same Talmud Bracha. Because whenever you have not yet begun the next blessing, the bus is still waiting for you. So it's as if you're still by the bracha of Baruch Aleinu. The second you even said the word ka, you're in another station already. You can't say it anymore. Bus left. But then there's another bus stop. The next bus stop is in Shema Kileinu. You say Shema Kileinu.
The bracha of Tikah, then say it.
You can't say it in there. There's no relation. What does Shayfer have to do with rain? So you move on. And this is where it gets a bit complex. You have to remember that you forgot to say the same Talmud to the bracha by the time you reach Shema Kileinu, and some of these trains run really quick, and some run very slow. And the quick or the slow can make you forget. It runs so slow that by the time you got to Shema Kileinu, you didn't even remember anymore about the rain. Or the opposite, by the time you...
Short-term memory.
So this is the special klipus of Shemana Esrei, as they say. So you reach Shema Kileinu, you want to do the right thing. You remembered before saying Katosh Met Filas Kol Peh, the same place where you say all your individual prayers. Say there as well, same Tal Umat Lev.
Where in Shema Kol?
Before Katosh Met Filas Kol Peh.
Where you say you're
within the bracha.
Yes, within the bracha Shema Kol. Correct.
not before it.
You know, even if you said in English or Yetz, if you said in English, God, give us rain. I love rain. Therapeutic, I like the sound. It is. And you said that, and you didn't even think, oh my gosh, I didn't even say something about the bracha. You just did. You just requested rain. So you're good.
You're good.
You're good.
So why does it have to do with rain? Then you said it's kind of important. It has something to do with rain. Shofar doesn't, but that bracha does.
Because that's a blessing that includes all requests.
A general blessing.
It's a general blessing of all requests, so it fits in.
The only one.
Okay?
And after that,
Then, if you miss that, the next stop is, same thing. You finish Baruch to Hashem Shemei Tefillah. Whoops! Forgot to say it again. Second time. Before you start Moedin, before you start with say, not Moedin, but say, before you start with say, the next word, right?
yeah.
You say V'sem Kalamat L'Vrach. Again, it's still part of the Shema Kileinu stop. But that's our third, fourth stop. Okay, that's our fourth stop. If you miss that stop as well. But you remember before you finish Mina Esrei, and you got to go back to the stop of Baruch Aleinu.
What stop?
If you started with say,
Oh, Baruch Aleinu.
you started with say, then you remembered, back to Baruch Aleinu.
I'm not to the beginning of the prayer.
Take, Monopoly, take 10 steps back, do not collect $100, well, that's what you're going to have to do.
Baruch
You're
Aleinu
going to have to go to Baruch Aleinu.
that contains the same, the whole bracha, the whole block.
Yeah, you're repeating from there. You're repeating the whole Shemon Esrei from there.
From the beginning of that bracha.
What do you
From
do
that
on
bracha.
Yom Tov or
So,
Shabbos?
now, if you didn't remember,
You don't have these stops.
if you didn't remember until you're ready,
It's not in Shabbos.
finish the second Yehi Ratzon Meifibigim Fnech Hashem Tzur B'Gam. You're about to take 3 steps back. Raise the shoulder, bring them off. It's over. You got to start it again. So we have 4/5 stops to make it in with. Didn't make it, you have to repeat Shemon Esrei. Now, what about if we're in doubt? I am not sure. I don't remember if I said in Baruch Aleinu. I don't remember if I said it in Shema Kileinu. I don't remember if I went back and said it. So, with such amnesia, we tell the guy, when did the amnesia happen? It says the Mishnah Berurah, very interesting. The general halacha is, the Shulchan Aruch, regarding Mashruch, the same applies for the same Tamat Bracha. If you're in doubt, we assume you didn't say it. We assume you said your normal time, which is say the same bracha, until 30 days pass. So meaning starting Zayin, Kislev, the halacha will change. If you say, I'm not sure if I said it, you most likely did, so you don't have to repeat Shemon Esrei. We assume you said it. But until Zayin Kislev for Israelis, for us, within these 30 days, it's a problem. If we don't remember, we have to assume we didn't say it. So if you didn't remember if you said it in Baruch Aleinu, what do? You have another bus stop. In Shema Kileinu, put it in. Worst comes to worst, you say it twice. Right?
Doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt. You'll ask for rain twice, worst comes to worst.
One more right there.
So put it in those stops that we mentioned. But if you went to Shemon Esrei and you didn't do this, then you waited to finish Shemon Esrei and then you asked the question, you have to repeat Shemon Esrei. Now what happens if the guy daven Shachos at 7 o'clock in the morning? You finish Shemon Esrei, he comes a half hour late and he's like, oh my gosh, did I say Baruch Aleinu? This is where the Mishnah comes in and says, we know how people's minds work. A doubt is only a doubt if it's in close proximity to the prayer. Then you just finished davening and you don't remember. Then you have to go back. But if some substantial amount of time has already passed, we don't expect you anymore to remember what happened. And therefore, we don't consider it a doubt. The fact that you didn't have the doubt right after the Shemona Esrei invalidates the later doubt, basically. That's what he says, so that would not make you be required to repeat it again. Otherwise, we'd have people every hour davening Shemona Esrei. They don't remember if they said it.
Every 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, what you just said.
Within 30 days.
That's within the 30 days. After
You have to
30
go-
days that
you
you've
have to go
said
back.
it,
Where do
you've
you go
gotten
back
used to
to?
it.
So where do you go back to?
All the rules. If you do it in the stops, if you didn't make the stops, back to the beginning.
What happens if you're forced to go to the beginning again?
And you forgot it
Forgot
again.
again.
So this question is brought in the Poskim. And a lot of places in the rule that we go, we say we have a 2 strikes you're out rule. We're not like California that they give 3 strikes. We give 2 strikes you're out. 2 times you tried saying it and you missed, you don't get a 3rd chance.
No?
No 3rd chance.
You're just not yotzi, that's the end of it.
You tried. You tried your best.
No.
Now, in such a case that you remember that you didn't say the same Talmud to Uvach, and it's already mincha time, and you have to daven mincha twice, you have to daven tashlumin. You have to make up the prayer for Shabbos that you missed, because you didn't, from a rabbinical standpoint, you didn't daven Shemona Esrei.
But the half hour, the hour has passed.
No, I'm saying you know you didn't say it.
Oh, you know
Not
you
in the
didn't say
hour. You know you didn't say it. You didn't know that we started saying Saint Talamat. You didn't know. A lot of people, a lot of newbies, Americans that come here, or anyone from the diaspora, they're very confused about what's going on with this whole rain business in Zion Nefesh. I've had a lot of questions with this, so many questions. Half of them start saying it together with Mashiv Ruach, the other half waits up for 5th of December. So there's a whole confusion here of what's going on in Israel. And it caused a major invalid. I had one guy who, the day before the 5th of December, asked me, when did we start saying it? What are you talking about? We started saying it, Zion Mar Cheshvan, we started saying it. He was here, he was in Israel. So so it would end up that he had, 2 months worth of invalid Shemona Esrei. So I told him, if he really cares about making up, he has to be chazan now, so he can daven chazaras hashatz for the next 60 days. That's what he did. He became chazan for 2 months to make up his lack of same Talmud to the brachas. It's a hiddur. You don't have to. It's a hiddur. Anyways. Okay, so in Monday's Day Halacha, we discussed the questions that were asked last week regarding travelers. And in short, what we explained, was pretty much touched the same last week, that this is a major dispute if one travels from Israel to the diaspora, what should he do about St. Talmud to the Bracha, or when he travels from the diaspora to Israel. We have one large group of poskim who say, follow where you are. Another large group of poskim who say, follow where you came from. And bottom line is like this. Someone who travels from Israel to the U.S., everyone agrees, if you're traveling now, since you already began saying St. Talmud Rafa, you continue. What if you traveled Monday?
If you travel now,
then you continue. But if you traveled yesterday...
Whether you're American or Israeli, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. If you're an American flying back, no, then we enter into... That's a case of dispute, if you should have started with saying. But if you're Israeli, and you live here, this is your place of residence, and you traveled starting... if you travel from today and onwards and you already began saying it, doesn't matter who you are, you continue saying it, okay? Now some say that if you knew, let me do this in order. There's a few cases here that can get complex, so let's do this. An Israeli resident lives here, that travels from today and onwards, they continue saying it. That's the unanimous approach. That's not what no one davens from Nesser before Hesed.
no, let's say Chazarat Hashatz.
So no, correct. In Chazaras Hashatz, he wouldn't say it at all. He davens like that. Don't forget, he's saying Chazaras Hashatz for them. He needs to be might see them.
So
they can't say it.
He can say it according to...
In his Lachash, in his Parish Nesser, he says whatever he's supposed to be saying, same time to the Bracha. And in Chazaras Hashatz, he says something else. Now, he doesn't say, he says the same Bracha. Now, if one of us would have traveled, or somebody traveled yesterday, Monday, and the flight left, okay? It picked up off Ben Gurion at 5:30 in the afternoon. What time was Shkia yesterday? 6:06. So it got into the sky at 6:06. At 6:20, it was already out of Israeli airspace. They made a minyan from Arab at 6:25 on the plane. They lost it, according to many poskim. Many other poskim say, no, you're Israeli. You do it like your makom, or your place of origin. Bottom line is that the arbitration of this was, you say it in Shema Kileinu. So he's going to have to say it now in Shema Kileinu till the 5th of December or till he returns to Israel. The second he returns, he will say it in Borei V'Leinu. Okay? Now, someone who is from the U.S. travels to Israel, the opposite way, right? He travels, so what does he do? Same dispute. Some say follow your place of origin, meaning don't say it until the 5th of December. And some say follow where you are, so begin saying it the 7th of Mar Cheshvan. The basic dispute is that where should we daven for rain for? Should we daven for rain for our place of origin where our parnas is really dependent, our family's there? Or should we daven for it? In other words, what's more important to you? Your current plate of food or your future plate of food? What's more important? Okay? So that's the machlekes here of where you should daven for rain for. But in this situation, of the opposite, we don't tell him say Nishma Kaleinu, we say it like everybody else, because here in Eretz Yisrael, but that's the adapted approach, that you blend in with everybody else. You say Shema, you say it within Baruch Aleinu. The only thing is, if you travel back, that's when we'll tell you to then say it again only in Shema Kaleinu. So it gets a bit confusing.
What does it help you say it Shema Kaleinu? What is it? Why does that shift to it?
Because in Baruch Aleinu, if you're not allowed to say it, you're basically first changing the nusach. And by changing the nusach, you're invalidating the blessing, thereby invalidating Hol Shemoneh Esrei. But I'm allowed, I'll tell you what brings the Shulchan Aruch, if an individual has a need for rain, I live in a certain place, and I need rain in my field. I'm not allowed to ask God in Shema Kaleinu Hashem, can you arrange just a few buckets right here?
You are allowed. Just rain or anything else?
Whatever you want, yeah. Shema Kaleinu is a free blessing, whatever you want. So I said it. It's the power of area where you go, you can fulfill like everybody. Okay, it's the joke. Okay, the laws of Kiddush Levan.
Good.
Last week we concluded the whole discussion, which didn't do justice to the subject.
Where did the 5th of December become the determining? Where did Chazal decide that the 5th of December in Fuslars is the date that they changed?
Well, it's brought in the Gemara.
What?
It's brought in the Gemara. 60th day after the Tkufa of the winter. When autumn begins, 60 days later is when we start asking for rain. That's the minute. That was the law in Bavel, and that's the law in the entire.
How do you know when autumn begins?
It's always, the seasons don't change. Seasons are seasonal. They start on the same exact date every single year, except for our leap year where they're a little off, few hours or a day off. But other than that, the solar calendar remains the same all the time. That's why technically this whole thing of having a Jewish calendar every year you need a new one, it's really bogus. You don't need a new one every year, because I'm saying in terms of times, for Zman, you don't need a new one every year to know when Shkia is. The secular date is the same secular time, forever.
Oh, you're forever.
Never changes. I have a calendar at home of all the Zmanim for 1 year, but for the secular dates, Gregorian calendar, and that's the exact date. That's I woke up today is the 16th of October. That's the time, the 16th of October. But you need to make parnasa, so we sell one a year. They don't tell us these tricks.
What is it? The 5 or 6th? December 5 or 6?
Because of leap year, because it's called a leap year. Remember, the sun is not like exact. It's not Yekish 365 on the dot, the second. That's it. It made a new round. There's an overdraft.
This is the longest year. It was 385.
Yeah, we have shown. Okay, let's do this. Kiddush Levana. What's the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana? We want to go through some of the halachas, minhagim, meaning behind this mitzvah. So last week, as I said, we discussed about the Levana in general. We went through that. We went through how the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChedesh, how it is, and we actually came up with a very interesting Chiddush, which we said is that the Rashi Chadashim today are all the result of the biblical sanctity that was given by Hillel Hazaken. He sanctified all the Rashi Chadashim to Mashiach Tzipin.
That's why you don't need witnesses.
That's what witnesses do, correct. And we explained last week how, because part of the process of sanctifying the new moon is the calculation and the bezdin. And if you need to skip the witnesses, you're allowed to. We went through this last week and explained it. Okay, so now we're going to go through the idea of Kiddush HaChedesh. So before we go into not Kiddush HaChedesh, sorry, Kiddush Levana, before we go into the different particular laws of Kiddush Levana, I just wanted to review the stages of the moon, just so we have this clear, and then we'll go straight to the Kiddush Levana. Right? So, as we see here in this diagram, everybody see? Okay. So, as we see in this diagram right here, okay, so a few facts, fun cereal facts, right? The back of cereals that like this. Okay, so the moon is always half lit, always. It's never not half lit. The question is, what do we see? The moon is always half lit, and we always see half the moon. The only thing that changes is the diagonal from Earth, and not how much of the light part of the moon we see, how much of the dark part of the moon we see. We're seeing half. There's no such thing we're seeing less than half. And the moon is always half lit. Okay, so that's a fun fact for the day. Now, so when the moon is over here, this is new moon. This is where it's directly opposite between the Earth and the Sun, not in terms of a lunar eclipse, right? Not a solar eclipse, this would mean. The solar eclipse would be when the Mamish exactly blocked by the Sun. Then we wouldn't see the Sun. But in terms of not the angle, but in terms of that, in the position, it's between the Earth and the Sun. So then we wouldn't see the light part of the moon. The light part of the moon is facing the Sun, so we see the dark part. So that's the new moon. The moon then continues to stage 2, which is called the waxing crescent. Okay, so that's where we see a tiny drop, as you see over here. That's the tiny, tiny drop we see. This is usually between day 3 to 5, the waxing crescent.
That corresponds to 2 there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we get to 3. 3 is the first quarter. First quarter is already about day 8, day 9.
That's where we are now.
Okay. Yeah, that's where we are now. It looks like it's half here, but it's not half. Look, this is 3. This is okay. It's a quarter of the moon. Then we get to stage 4, which is the waxing gibbous. Strange name. 4. Probably some guy who discovered it.
It's 3/4.
Right. So that's 3/4, and then of course, so this is about the 12th, and then we get the 15th of the month, and then of course it begins decreasing in the opposite day. We have the full moon, the waning gibbous, the last quarter, and the waning crescent. So here you can see it here in this picture. You see it in the cover. So we're going to go through the exact stage of Kiddush Levana. When is it done? So when can it be done? Which stage? To sound sophisticated, we'll use these new terms we just used. You can say it between the first quarter and the waxing gibbous stage. Gibbous. Okay. So the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana. What is this mitzvah? So it is not a biblical command. There is no biblical command to say a blessing on the new moon. There's a biblical command on the Sanhedrin and the Bezdin to sanctify the new moon. That's to create Rosh Chodashim. We discussed that already. There is no biblical command to bless the new moon in the bracha that we say on Mechadish Chodashim, that we say in Kiddush Levana. This blessing is a rabbinical institution recorded in the Talmud, together with many of the other rabbinical institutions of blessings. And so there it's brought down that a person should, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that when a person goes outside, every month when a person goes outside and he sees the new moon at night, he is to recite the blessing, Asher Mamori Bara Shechal. Yeah, Gemara in Sanhedrin, the source, the Gemara in Sanhedrin 42a. Of course we do. That's the bracha. That's the nusach. One second. We're going to say when. So this is the general. We're going to go through all the details soon. But this is the first source. I'm going now through the first source of Kiddush Levana.
And repeat it. It's whenever we go out, say it again.
Every month.
Yeah.
So the actual literal wording is, upon seeing the new moon, one is to recite the blessing, Vasher B'Amarei Bar Shechak. Okay? Now from that wording, Talmudic and Shulchan Aruch wording, it seems like it's saying, if you happen to be outside and going for a walk, and you happen to see the new moon, so happen to say the blessing. It doesn't sound like it's an obligation. It's sort of like a very similar rulings of other blessings that we know of. If you happen to go outside in the month of Nisan, and you happen to see a fruit tree blossoming, then say a blessing. Comment, right? You happen to see a rainbow. However, in truth, it's explained, the Magen Avram and other places can explain that this is an incorrect conclusion. And we understand why a person would get tricked to make this conclusion from the wording, but it's an incorrect conclusion. It is an obligation to make it an effort to go out when you know. We know it's not like it's scheduled. We know that when it comes, the first of the month, there is no new moon. The new moon is not visible yet. So you know that it's going to be visible soon. It's not a surprise. You know it's going to happen. So a person has an obligation to try to go outside and get it in order to say the bracha. Where do we learn this from? We learn this from the Magen Avraham. And Avraham there writes, discusses, is a blind person to say Kiddush Levana? And he doesn't write a blind person is allowed to say Kiddush Levana. He writes a blind person is obligated to say Kiddush Levana. Hey, really? I didn't even know I'm obligated. It doesn't say you have to. Here he says you have to. It's an obligation.
He doesn't see it.
Well, he has friends, right? He has friends. I'm going to go with a friend. He'll ask his friend, do you see the moon? Yes. Are you benefiting from the moon? Yes. He'll say the bracha.
Are you benefiting?
We people benefit when other people benefit as well. That's the whole idea of saying many blessings in the morning.
Where do we benefit from the moon, by the way?
Seems moon light. Right. Just you ever be in an area where there's no moon, there's no light? You know how much light the moon provides us? Moon and stars, it gives us light. People used to travel based on the moon and stars. Without it, you would, pitch black. Nowadays that we have electricity, it's like, God, we don't need it anymore. It's like, but believe me, if you're right now in Panama City and you're part of those 1,500,000 customers that doesn't have any electricity, you'll be appreciating the moon and the sun very much.
Are there Kabbalah reasons also, sort of the mystical moon or something, There's a Kabbalah reason other than just this practical benefit, that why you bless the moon? It seems like these are mystical.
Coming up.
Oh, you got that?
Absolutely. Sure. What do you want the second course? We're still finishing the first course.
Never know.
Okay. Okay, very good. So that has been said. A question that's asked in the Mefarshim, why don't we say the bracha of Shechianu? The blessing of Shechianu. It's a new mitzvah. Say a new blessing. The reason that one of Jerusalem not face the moon, you saw the moon, you got your benefit, now it's time to thank God. What do I need to look at the moon for? Okay?
What if the moon is in the direction of the race of Israel?
That's fine. No, you don't have to face the other way, but I'm just saying, you don't have to face the moon. I used to have a Rosh Hashiva that every month of Kiddush Levana, he would come with us and say it with us, and he would say, Jerusalem worshippers this way, moon, and say it with us, and he would say, Jerusalem worshippers this way, moon worshippers that way. And there was always a group that would worship, that would say to the moon. Anyways, the meaning. This is recorded from the Gadim. The moon and stars all express God's greatness. The Mefarshei, Torah, Pashas Bereshis, many of them write, why did Hashem create on Wednesday? The Iris HaGadolim. He had light, he had darkness already. What do you need the sun for and the moon for and all this stuff? What do you need all these, all the fireworks? For that exact reason, to show, for Hashem wanted to have a vivid example. For humanity to have a vivid example. For humanity to have a vivid example of God's constant providence and constant interaction with the world, and basically a stamp of proof of his signature on the world's creation. You see, every single day, the moon moving, the sun moving. How does this happen? Who's pressing the buttons? Who's making it move? How does it move on its own? So every thinking person will automatically leave the religion of atheism when he thinks about this. When he thinks about that how is this possible for something to move on its own?
It's a good week for that lesson, right?
Abraham, of course. Yes. So that's what's brought down. Avraham Avinu saw the things moving. First he saw the sun. He said the sun must be God. Then he saw the sun was pushed off by the moon must be God. And the moon was pushed off by the sun. So we came to the conclusion, it must be the someone upstairs controlling the buttons. His awesomeness and his continued providence and effect in the world. The entire prayer is said only towards Hashem and not towards any celestial being, heaven forbid, once again negating the wrong havamina that you can have, that chas v'shalom, this is a prayer to the constellations. This is the meaning that we receive the face of the Shekhinah. He says, what's the meaning of receiving the face of the Shekhinah? It's very literal. You're emphasizing and you're internalizing God's constant providence. And you go off for Kiddush Levana. The reward. When it says Kiddush Levana, does not need to worry that he will die from that day and onwards to the end of the month. This is recorded in the Kaf HaChaim and other places. It's brought down. The one who says Kiddush Levana does not need to worry that he will die from that day and onwards till the end of the month.
Really?
That's what it says in This means to say that he will not die in a natural death then. That's what he writes. He interprets that statement that a person will not die in unnatural death that month. Kiddush Levana gives him that protection.
What happens to Rosh Chodesh
What happens Rosh
and the
Chodesh?
next Rosh Chodesh?
Right, you had a week of danger.
A
Of danger.
month. A month.
No? Or 3
A
days?
month. Stay at home. Stay at home.
Stay at home. Under the covers.
A school of refining of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in Sefer Hamidus writes,
Tell your mother.
which very interestingly is also brought in the Kafachan, the famous Sephardi place. It's the only time I've seen him quote from Rabbi
They
Nachman
quote
of Breslov.
directly from Rabbi Nachman.
Directly from Rabbi Nachman. It is a school for finding a shidduch to recite Kiddush Levana with intense concentration and with a congregation. It doesn't mean that someone who's married is not interested in that the wife shouldn't say it. Just saying that it has a segula for one who is single. Okay, so that is, again, but
Can you say it for my daughter?
Yes.
why not? Yeah.
Can you say it for your children?
With intense concentration
Okay.
and with a congregation. We said, Reb Nachman said two things. Intense concentration and with a minyan. Okay?
Is it brought down a specific place
Sefer
to have the
Hamidus.
concentration?
Really?
Not that I'm aware of. I did not see it.
The Kafachan,
Maybe
Rabbi
Breslovers
Nachman?
can give a deeper commentary on this. Maybe they have some commentaries on this of where exactly he referred to. I'm not aware.
How did the Kafachan learn Rabbi Nachman? He quotes directly Rabbi Nachman?
Yeah, you're surprised by this, huh?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time handling this information.
Sephardi,
Yes.
Sephardi.
Yeah. He quotes also from Menachem Elimelech.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A
Thank you
school
for
a school for healthy teeth. It's brought down in
Healthy
Tanim and
teeth.
Hagim, the
Teeth.
name of Rabbi Yisrael of Rzhin. Always
said-
worrying about those dentists, those cavities. Can you eat that, have that snack or not? Say Kiddush Levana. Kiddush Levana is
You
better
show your
than
teeth.
mouthwash
Show your
and
teeth
brushing
for
your
that.
teeth.
Bad breath.
Not in place of
For
it.
bad breath.
It doesn't say that. It is a school for having healthy teeth. So, as I mentioned, the Rebbe also mentioned this in a letter that regarding the school. There's a story with the Rebbe about this of an individual. As we know in Halacha, also toothaches is not just something that's bothersome or painful. But it's actually something that in Halacha is actually viewed as deadly. It's viewed as something very, very serious toothache. Pain in the tooth. And
Abscess or something like that.
yeah, so basically in Halacha we find that the Kiddush Levana, for some reason, I don't really know how, but because the moon is so bright and clean, that's having nice and clean teeth, I have no idea. But there is some kind of connection between that and the teeth.
Well, you're supposed to meditate on
Well, obviously, to get these skulas, the person cannot rush through. The person should not rush through. The Kiddush Levana. So what we're emphasizing here, this idea, so a person, builds his confidence and his importance in his eyes of Kiddush Levana. In Medrash Talpias, and it's brought down in many other sources as well, we have the following stories where many poskim, the Shai Tshuva, the El Yerabba, Fedel Lev, following story that happened. They say that Kiddush Levana is a school for long life. Where do we learn this from? We learn this from the following story, that there was once a Jew who met a Gentile. The story's not over. Late at night, by himself. And in Halacha, we have a Halacha. It is forbidden for a Jew to be secluded alone with a Gentile, which I will clarify what that means in unstructured societies where crime is on the loose and there is no police, there is no...
Chicago.
Unfortunately, a number of cities. I'll just example here in Israel. Do not be alone at 2 o'clock at night with an Arab from Gaza or any other city. Okay. It's also according to Halacha because of Pikuach Nefesh. It's a kanas nefashis. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. So this individual, this Jew, happened to meet this Gentile, and the guy desired to murder the Jew. The Jew saw that the moon was shining, and he asked the guy, as is commonly a common courtesy of the murderers, a last request. They'll murder you, but the last request they have to respect. So he respected the last request law. It's a story in the Gemara also. It's a story in the Gemara of Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish also got stuck in a similar situation. They tied him up, were about to cook him for dinner. Literally, he got stuck in a clan of cannibals. And they were about to cook him for dinner, and he had a last request. And he used his last request to basically trick them and then have them for dinner. He got out. and he killed him.
Wow.
But
What was the
They
reason?
do that.
it's a story in Maseches Gittin. Let's finish this story. So this guy got his last request. And what was his last request? Allow me to do the mitzvah of Kiddush Levanim before I die. The Gentile agreed. What does he care? Say a few words facing the moon or facing Jerusalem about the moon. So the guy agreed. And again, this story is all brought down in those sources that I mentioned. And he began saying with tremendous concentration and inner desire. And a miracle happened as soon as he began saying the words in which we begin lifting our feet 3 times. He lifted himself to a different area. Hashem made a miracle, and this person
Elevated.
became transferred to a different area. And the guy didn't understand what happened.
Disappeared.
He literally disappeared. And the wind carried him away from the Gentile, and he never met the Gentile again, and was hence saved from certain death. The Poskim, this is not a Baba Mice, the Poskim all record this story, and say, so we see that it is a skula for long life.
Boy, I can't wait.
Why don't we say Kiddush Hachama? Why just Kiddush Levana?
They do it every 27 years.
28. Why every 28
28
years? Why not every year? The sun does a cycle every year. Every year the sun does a cycle. What do you mean? How do you have winter, summer? It's every single year, 365 days it takes for it to do the cycle. So just like the moon does a monthly cycle, the sun does a yearly cycle. Why don't we say Kiddush Hachama? So the place to bring down as there's an inner connection between us and the moon, as the Jews are compared to the moon. Yeah, then Malavana, while to the sun, the Goyim are compared to the sun. You have to bless the sun
reflected
on
light.
their behalf. Okay. Who is obligated to say Kiddush Levana? So of course men, that goes without saying, as we mentioned. Women. The Poskim discuss, should women recite Kiddush Levana or not? And the answer is that women are exempt from Kiddush Levana.
If they want to.
One second. Women are exempt from Kiddush Levana. And the reason for that is through the normal rule of mitzvah essay shazman grama. Every positive command, whether biblical or rabbinical, which we already established is the case with Kiddush Levana, if it's time dependent, then you're exempt. A woman is exempt. But it's not so simple, say some Poskim. What do you mean it's time dependent? It's not time dependent, it's moon dependent. What does it do with time? If a woman bought a house, and the house is only going to be available, or rented a home, it's only going to be available on the 15th of the month, is she putter from putting up a mezuzah? It's time dependent. She's not going to have the house till the 15th. What does it do with time? What does it do with time? It has to do with a fact of nature. When you own the home, that's when you become chayiv. When the moon becomes viewable. But that's not so simple because we don't all get a piece of real estate every month on, like someone's bankrolling us every month, giving us a piece of real estate. With the moon, it's pretty much guaranteed. You don't have to worry maybe next month we're not going to see the moon. It's pretty much guaranteed every month's going to happen. So that's the argument that there is. Bottom line is the Poskim rule, women are exempt from the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana. Furthermore, they add a few spices to this ruling. They said not just that, but they're not even allowed to say it. Why are they discouraged from saying Kiddush Levana? Writes the Prima Gadlim based on the Shlo and the Magen Avram. This has to do with a good old story that happened in Parshas Bereshis when Chava ate from that tree and gave it to Adam and gave it to everyone. We all know what happened. So there's a number of consequences that occurred after the eating from the fruit tree of good and evil. One of those is, according to this version, that beautiful moon that we see now became diminished to its current state. If Chava wouldn't have done it, the moon would be like the sun. And basically, the fact that we have periodical sightings of the different stages, waxing crescent, half moon, full moon, is because of Chava. So as they say, Ratzachta v'gam yarashta, you killed and now you also want to inherit. The sin caused the moon to become small, and now you want to say a blessing over it? As a tikkun, so we do the tikkun. We say it, but the woman, it wouldn't be, even though they're trying to make amends, it wouldn't be,
It's like Bahevdal also.
too much animosity in this room. You have to have a shliach, send a shliach.
But Adam also ate, didn't he?
Huh?
Didn't Adam also eat the food?
Yeah, but it's not the same. The moon knows who fed Adam. As we discussed in last week's lecture for the woman, that in many different mafarshim
So
how
it began the menstrual period,
receive the
right?
food.
So it's connected to the menstrual period?
100%. That also happened due to the result of that, and it's connected to the moon. Yeah.
I thought the problem with the moon was to begaivadik.
Right. So correct. It is contradictory midrashim, and maybe we could say that they're both true. There was a certain aspect of diminishing of the moon that happened as a result of the complaining, and which I think is a great disciplinary action that God teaches us. If a kid ever complains, that kid got so much more and I got less, so you make sure he got less. It works all the time for the future. But it could be that there was a second stage of some diminishing. Maybe the moon, maybe we can say like this, I don't know for sure, maybe we could at least give the option. The moon was made smaller due to the argument. Chava came along, ate from it, and that caused now the periods. The moon would have stayed half the whole time. But now, because she ate from it, now the moon goes through this whole system. Not being seen, hide and seek. Whatever it is, this is what the place can bring down. This is what you follow the halacha. By the way, the Alter Rebbe also brings this concept. Women are exempt from Kiddush Levana in chapter 106, and that is halacha l'maisa, the minhag of all Klal Yisrael. Women do not do Kiddush Levana.
Did your average Litvish person know about the extra meaning behind it, about the not allowed and why not allowed, or is this pretty much known if you know?
This is written in the Magen Avraham. It's a pretty classic pasuk. That's the reason why women don't do it. Okay. Regarding children, a child from the age of chinuch is to be educated in every mitzvah, including the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana.
What age is that?
When the child understands the meaning, understand the concept that there's a moon that goes around and then it gets big and gets small.
Is there a more basic kosher law about
and they understand the benefit of the moon.
But is bar mitzvah the absolute threshold?
100%, and then they have to. Then it's already their own personal obligation. It's not chinuch, it's their own personal obligation.
Urge from the age of
But from the time that they are in first grade, I began asking my son. Daughters don't do it. I began testing my son to see if he understands. So in first grade, he still thought that the moon is a big cheese ball, that some, rats.
It's a matzah.
A big matzah, right, that's also true. Depends from which company you get from. Anyways, they don't understand. The second you tested them, you see that there's mental maturity in comprehension. Chinuch, the mitzvah of chinuch, it begins to come. Now there is an interesting approach that the Mishnah Berurah writes that suggests that perhaps children are not obligated to be educated in Kiddush Levana at all until they turn bar mitzvah. And the reason is because we find a debate amongst the Rishonim between Rabbeinu Tam and his grandfather Rashi regarding if you have to educate a child in saying the nighttime Shema. Perhaps not, or the morning Shema, as it's nighttime, they go to sleep. So any mitzvah that can happen at night, if they're already sleeping, how can you educate them? We don't have an obligation to wake them up. So that's why some say you don't have to educate children. But bottom line is that we do. We educate children. We already mentioned that a person who is Achmana with Slan blind is nonetheless obligated in the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana. However, since some place can dissent, Makash of Yaakov Castro and others say that no, a blind person.
Right, I think you do it as early as possible.
They say grab a mitzvah's reason because you have an opportunity. Don't forget the insurance policy. And someone says, yeah, I'm going to do life insurance when I'm 70. I'm going to do health insurance when I'm 70. I have plenty of time. What do I have to do it early for? Right? So they want their guarantee early, so they do it early. So that's one approach. Second approach is that no, you must wait for a full 3 days, 72 hours to pass from the Moilad, not Gimel L'Chodesh. This doesn't mean Davar B'Chodesh, from the Moilad. Usually, the Moilad, okay, the Moilad is when, so we discussed this last week regarding a little bit about the Moilad. The Moilad is basically when, according to our calculation, which is scientifically factual, it's not like a theory, it's a fact. when the moon will reach the state of new moon, right here, stage 1.
Oh.
The second it reaches stage 1, that's meaning because the second it reaches stage 1, the very next second, it doesn't stop there for a drink for 5 minutes. It continues moving. So the very next second, it's already past stage 1. So that's called the moilad. So we know exactly when it reaches here. As I said last week, just find out the moilad of any time in history, of any month in history, and you can calculate from then on and backwards, forward and backwards, all the moilad history. So we know the moilad that occurred by Adam Rishon. We know because we calculate back. Because we know there's exactly 29 days, 12 hours, and 796 halacha, which we said is equivalent to 44 minutes and 3.3 seconds. So we know that exact amount. So we know when there will be the phase of new moon. So count 3 days from then, and you can then begin saying Kiddush Levana if you see the moon, of course. Right?
Did we make the rule already that new moon is the time when we say it? It has to be called new moon?
No, I said there's a number of approaches. We're going through them.
Right.
First approach was the second you can see the moon. Forget about the phases, drop all these names. You can see it. It's after new moon. You can go ahead. Meaning it's after the first of the month. It's not the first of the month. It's still part of the previous month, right? It's already Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month. You see the new moon. Go ahead and say it. Okay.
The idea being that we're going to say it
That's the first
as soon as we benefit from it. It's all about the
Correct.
benefit of the light. So
Correct.
Even a sliver is benefiting.
Exactly. The second opinion, which is the opinion of Rabbeinu Yaina and many of the Achreinim, the Taz, the Magen Avram. This is the opinion of the majority of the Paiskim, okay, including the Mishnah Brura, and this is the opinion that Litvish jury follows till this very day.
It's 3 days.
Is, as we said, 3 days from the Moilad, and the reason behind this opinion is in other words, we all agree that the main factor here is the benefit, but how much benefit? So they say it's not enough to have a dim light. You need to have a nice amount, and that takes 3 days. 72 hours of cooking up of the moon. The moon has been 72 hours into its orbit. We now see enough of the moon to be able to get a nice substantial benefit to be able to say that blessing. And then comes the third approach, which pushes it up more. And the third approach is you have to wait until 7 days pass from the Moilad. Again, not Zayin B'Chodesh. No one says, there is no approach or opinion who says that we measure it from the actual day of Rosh Chodesh. That's not what we care about. There's no reason to measure it by Rosh Chodesh. As we discussed in last week's class, Rosh Chodesh is not always the day of the Moilad. The way the calendar was set up by Hillel, that was sanctified forever till Mashiach Tzidkenu, was based on the Moilad, but not in correspondence to that the Moilad falls on the day of Rosh Chodesh. Sometimes it's a day before, sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes even 3 days before. If sometimes that the Moilad is on Chavav Chavzayin. Yeah. It happens.
Can't see
Here in the chapter, I went through a few years.
But you have it at 2 and 3?
Huh?
You have where it would happen on the second day or the third day also?
Later? No, never.
Never?
Always early.
So then it's going to be Zion anyway.
Huh?
Then it's going to be Zion anyway, because it's never later.
No, I'm saying it would be correct. So it would never be. It would never be later than Zion.
Right.
Correct.
So Zion you can always do it.
It can happen a little later than Rosh Chodesh. That is true. It can happen within the day. Let's say Rosh Chodesh is Sunday, meaning that started Motzei Shabbos. But the Moilad will only be Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon. Understand? That is possible. It is able to be within the day of Rosh Chodesh.
But then
it will never be 2-3 days past Rosh Chodesh.
But wouldn't that still be Zion?
No, it wouldn't. It would push it off more. We have to see the Zion Shleim. We're going to get to that. If it's 7 times 24 hours. Is 7 times 24 hours or 7 days, weekdays? That's another question. We'll get to that soon. But first, let's deal with this opinion.
Mola doesn't equal viewability, right? Mola does
No.
Many things we can't see often.
What, they have nothing to do with each other.
Right.
Moilad means the scientific, factual time that the moon is now new moon, opposite the sun. Viewability, we discussed, that's Sanhedrin's job. That was, remember last week we discussed when the Rambam insulted all of us, called us all less than 5-year-olds. We don't even have the brains of 5-year-olds. That was talking about if you can't figure out the Moilad is so simple. Do 29, 12, 44, 3.3 seconds plus that. plus it's up. So that's a 5-year-old can figure that out. But to figure out the visibility, that's Yisachar, that's a job of Yisachar. That was the deep, complex subjects that only the daily Yisrael were able to accomplish. So that's something else. Visibility is a totally different aspect. There are in the school even today that can do that. In Beitar there was a Russian scientist who was able to do this. He one time came out and he said, I'm going to show. I wasn't there, but I was told by a number of people who were there, and told me afterwards that he said, watch, the moon is going to be able, you're going to be able to see it at exactly this and this time this month. He said it a few days before. Exactly this and this time from this and this specific area. And everyone thought he's a Navi Sheker, a guy, he's like the forecaster of the weather. But, no, he came, they went outside, he brought a group outside, that exact time, and second to the spot, there it was. It's a chachma. You can figure out, when you have a lot of things, you have to put in the calculation, figure it out. But that's not for us. Viewability is not the same thing as moilad. Okay. This approach of Zai in 7 days, this is the approach of the Mechaber in his Shulchan Aruch, based on the Mekubalim. This is the approach of the Kabbalists. Okay? The approach of Kabbalah is that you have to wait 7 days from the moilad. This is likewise the approach that the Alter Rebbe records in his Siddur. The Alter Rebbe in his Siddur writes, we say Kiddush Levana 7 days past the moilad. So we have here the Ashkenazi Paiskin, most of them, the Taz, the Magen Avram, the Mishnah Brura, the Gra, all precede to the 7th. The Mechaber Sfardim, as well as the Alter Rebbe Chassidim, say the 7th is the time that you can begin saying it, not earlier. The source of this, who is the Kabbalist that made this statement? Not the Arizal. This already occurred about 200 to 300 years before the Arizal by the Kabbalist Rav Yosef Gegetilia, the author of the Shari Oyer, one of the first Kabbalist firm to ever be published and printed. Shari Oyer is a very fundamental Kabbalah sefer, one of the most fundamental Kabbalist firm pre-Arizal time. Era, and that's where it's brought down until the 7th of the month.
Shar, what? Say it again.
Shari Oira.
In Italy, right?
Correct. And so this is also recorded later by the students of the Arizal Mishnah's Chassidim and other sources. So what do? So it seems very simple. Sfardim and Chassidim do the 7th, Ashkenazim do the 3rd, and if you're a Gra follower, even earlier than the 3rd. Right? We said as soon as you can see. So practically the Chabad custom and the custom of Chassidim and Sfardim is to wait till 7 days. We try to never say Kiddush Levana before 7 days have passed. Ashkenazim, Litvish, they do as we said from 3 days. That was the conclusion of the Mishnah Brura and the majority of Achreinim. As well, there is a Ruzhner tradition, a tradition of Chassidei Ruzhin, which is today Sadigara, from the Magid, from the Baal Shem Tov, that you don't have to wait 7 days. And they have a tradition. Don't wait 7 days. You should know this. You're Ruzhin.
Never heard of
This is a son after son. So, or son of
I'm from the...
Bottom line is that the tradition is that your great Zayda, the Magid of Mizrich, said it before 7 days.
But we don't.
Well, you didn't do it like the Raw did.
1 second. I'm sorry. My bad. Take that back. The tradition is the opposite. That while the Magid waited 7 days, the Baal Shem Tov did not. So the Magid did differently than the Baal Shem Tov. So the Magid, so you're good. The Magid waited 7 days, but the Baal Shem did not wait 7 days. And this is the tradition that they have amongst Rishon Chassidim. Okay.
And we wait 7 days, though.
Yeah, but so here comes a little catch for us. The Rebbe once had a long talk, and this is a talk that was the Dvar Malchus of Parshas Noach, Taf Shin Nun Beis. The last Sikha of Noach, and we heard till this date. Okay, and in that Sikha, which was edited, the Rebbe talks about the greatness of Kiddush Levana and the importance of Kiddush Levana. And there he also mentions the following: that even according to the Chabad custom, those areas that have poor visibility of the moon, especially during winter time, if Motzei Shabbos falls between 3 and 7, say it Motzei Shabbos, that's before the 7th.
Between 3 and 7 days from the Molech.
Correct. The Rebbe said this based on the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek also gave some push towards the approach of that you don't have to wait 7 days, that you can do within 3 days, which I already said after 3 days is the approach of most places.
The weather conditions.
So the Rebbe basically said that the Rebbe basically encouraged people not to make this or break it law. Be logical. If it's wintertime and there may be cloudy after the 7th, and now you have the opportunity, say it even before the 7th. The Rebbe concluded there.
How early though? The 3rd? From the 3rd?
From the 3rd, yes. The Rebbe concluded in the cases of question or doubt, one is to follow the ruling, the directive of the Rav of the community. He should make the decision, but the Rav basically should know he shouldn't be stuck to stone to that ruling of the 7th, and if necessary, he could say it earlier. And as I said, the Tzemach Tzedek himself, there were times that he said Kiddush Levana before the 7th of the month.
The Svat in the winter.
Would qualify, I would think.
Yeah, in the winter, the Tzemach Tzedek would say Kiddush Levana even before 7 days have passed from the Moilad. The reason for this is because of the cloud and rainy weather in Russian winters. Okay.
So you really have to know. You can't just rely on, you just go sort of with the flock of the community doing it. So you really have to know the range. You haven't gotten to the
Well, it
end
depends.
range.
If you know that the forecasters are saying we're going to have a blizzard, there's going to be snow, we're going to have, clouds for the next week and a half.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not talking about the weather exception. I'm moving back to the general. In that you really have to know the beginning. We're not really told. You just sort of move with the flock. The shul is all of a sudden after going out to say Kiddush.
Right.
You follow them, right? You don't really know usually.
Right.
And you haven't even gotten to the upper end of the range yet, the end range.
Right.
You haven't done
Yeah,
that
the
yet.
beginning range, yes. So let's just conclude it with our one last question on the beginning range, and that is, okay, so initially we follow the Kabbalistic approach. Initially we follow the Kabbalistic approach 7 days. 7 days is 7 24-hour days, so that would be, how much are we at? About 180 hours, right? 7 days. Or are we following the following? Does a day mean, let's say the Moilad was Sunday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Shkia is 5 hours later. Do I say that was already the first day? Monday's the second day. Tuesday's the third day. Comes along Shabbos. Shabbos is already the 7th day. So Motzei Shabbos, we can do Kiddush Levana. Because it's already past 7 days. Or do we say no? It can't be within the 7th day. It has to be past 7 full days. So I count 24 hours. If I count 24 hours, when is it going to be a full 7 days?
Sunday night.
It's Sunday afternoon. So you can't say Kiddush Levana if you follow the 7-day approach. So this is a major machlekes amongst the Mekubalim and amongst the Poskim. The Ramemi Puno, Rabbi Menachem Azariah from Italy, from Puno, a great student of the Arizal, says no need at all to wait 7 24-hour days from the Moilad. So long as you're within the 7th day, it is okay. And you can go ahead and do it, even according to Kabbalah. However, other Poskim, Yosef, the Chidah, and others write, no, according to Kabbalah, it's a full 7 days, bottom line. Chabad, we are lenient, we have a tradition to be lenient from, in the name of the Rabbi, from handed down from the Yaakov Landau, as well as we also have seen that the Rebbe in a number of months did Kiddush Levana, even though it was within 7 days, 7 full days did not pass. It wasn't yet what we called Shalom. They call this Zayin Shleim. It wasn't yet Zayin Shleim. It was within the 7. However, the Sephardim are very particular in this. They accepted the rulings of the Chidah, and therefore they always wait 7 days.
Full days.
7 full days, yes.
24 days.
Usually they're in also less cloudy.
Today is what?
So a halacha we didn't get to yet is that in the Ramah rules, and the Rebbe mentioned this in that Sikh of 1992, as an instruction that we should follow, which, of course, even without the Rebbe mentioning it should be instruction we follow, because it's written in the Shulchan Aruch, and that is that the Ramah writes that whenever the 10th of the month falls earlier than Motzei Shabbos, don't wait for Motzei Shabbos, say it during the week. That is exactly the time we find ourselves in right now. Right now it's Ches on Cheshvan, Motzei Shabbos will be past good, and therefore one is encouraged to gather a minyan.
We have to have a
Say,
minyan.
Chatchila we do with a minyan. Yes.
And then how late can you do it?
Next week. We'll have to do that next week.
Well, no, but we passed the next.
You can do for sure past the 10th. You have until the 15th
No,
plus.
can we do it next Tuesday? I don't know the
Next
answer.
Tuesday.
Wait, when you say
Is it too late?
Well, let's see, next Tuesday, I
If we
have to count from the mile, I have to look up when the mile was and do a whole calculation.
Does everyone in the minyan have to be Yotzi? It has to, or
10 Jews.
10 Jews,
Shechina.
whether they are
10 men,
saying it or
yeah.
not?
We need the Shekhinah.
No, not because they're participating, right?
Okay, the best thing is for 10 to participate, but if the next best option is to have at
Well,
least
they
10
have to
people.
do it outside, so they have to come out.
You just said the 15th. You mean this month because you know the range this
No,
month?
we're gonna do that next week. It's 14 point something hours past the mile.
And that usually is by the 15th, is what you're saying?
Correct, it's around that.
Okay, but we can't rely on
Every
the
month is
15th.
different. No,
Right, yeah,
every month is
everyone's
different.
different.
We'll discuss that.
The bottom line is we should do it as soon as possible with the
Bottom
minyan.
line, tomorrow night come with some tzedek, arrange a big Kiddush Levana minyan, and you're good.
You can type it in and encourage people. Yeah.
Where?
The Rebbe also spoke about making it a simcha and a big. I don't know why it didn't become so popular. The same sikha that says you should, and people adapted this. A lot of Hasidim throughout the world adapted this. That they made Kiddush Levana into a big ceremony and celebration, which is a great thing. Why didn't they adapt the same line
It's usually
that
Motzei
says
Shabbos and people are telling.
more rules that you're supposed to say it earlier?
One second before you go.